Okay, so this is dialogue 2. And yeah, so Jack has just come back from China and he's going off to Beijing again on business. And he's saying goodbye to Bai Xiaohong. So let's have a listen to what Bai Xiaohong says. Oops.
听说你要去北京了。
听说你要去北京了. Okay, so there's our 听说. So I've heard from somewhere. 你要去北京了. So here we have a good example of the use of 要 and 了 to express the idea that this is going to happen soon. Okay, and again I emphasize that the idea of soon is relative. So in the case of a trip it may be in a few days or a week, but in the case of something more imminent, for example having lunch, then that obviously the time frame is going to be much smaller. Okay, so 你要去北京了.
对呀，公司让我去北京办点事儿。
Okay, so the guy Jack 杰克 comes back and says 对呀，公司让我去北京办点事儿. So there's a couple of things in this sentence that I just want to talk to you about quickly. So 公司 we know means company, right? 让我去北京让我去北京. In the lecture, when I asked people what did it mean, 公司让我去北京, a few people said, "Oh, the company is allowing me to go to Beijing." In fact, in this case, in this kind of scenario, it doesn't mean to allow or let. It actually means to ask me to. We've learned a word before, which means a similar thing, 请请, which means please, but it also means to ask somebody to do something. So, for example, 请坐, asking you to take a seat, and that's fairly polite. 让 means the same thing, to ask somebody to do something, but it doesn't have that overtone of politeness in it. It doesn't mean that it's not polite, it's actually quite neutral. But this is an example where, for example, a company, if they're getting their employee to do something, they don't necessarily have to be, overly polite about it. So they would just use the neutral word like 让. And the same would be if it was your boss asking you to do something. 让我去北京. So to ask me to go to Beijing, to ask to do something. And here's the new word 办, and it's tied up together with 事. 办事 means to take care of things, to do things, to take care of matters, to take care of business, and so on. In this case, though, we've also added 点儿in the middle. And we know that 点 or 点儿 means a few or a little bit. So 办点事儿 means to take care of a few things, take care of some business. Okay? Right, let's have a look at what Bai Xiaohong next asks.
什么时候走？
什么时候走? Somebody asked me in the lecture, so can I say 什么时候去? Because 走 and 去 both mean to go. As I said at the time, yes, you can. Of course you can. You can say 什么时候去? When are you going? The difference is that 走, in fact, has the additional meaning of to depart or to leave. So if you want to ask that, when are you departing, when are you leaving? Well, you would use 走 rather than 去.
下星期三。
So the guy 杰克 answers 下星期三. So 星期三, I think we should all be okay with now. So that's Wednesday. And then we've got 下星期三. So 下 in this context means next Wednesday. So I'm pretty sure that you'd be able to guess pretty quickly how to say last Wednesday. So I'll give you a second. So that would be 上星期. And a lot of Chinese expressions work in that pattern of 上下. If we wanted to say this week, we would say 这个星期, and you probably put the measure word in 个, 这个星期. Right, let's see what Bai Xiaohong says next.
你对北京很熟悉了吧？
你对北京很熟悉了吧？ So I think you'll be able to understand from having looked at the vocab, 对 something 熟悉 means to be familiar with. So she's asking, so you would be familiar, you would be very familiar with Beijing. 对北京很熟悉. Now, why has she got the le there? Why has she got the le there? Because as we mentioned at the start of this dialogue, he's just come back from China and he's about to go off again. And so she's assuming that having been a couple of times, that he's going to be familiar with the city of Beijing. So when he first went, he wouldn't have been familiar, but now because he's been before and he's going again, the situation has changed, and he's now would be familiar with Beijing. She also uses "ba" as a question word, and as we know from first semester, "ba" means that she is assuming that she is correct, that she has guessed correctly, and she's expecting a yes answer. So let's see how he actually answers.
当然，你看这些照片，这是故宫，这是颐和园。
Right. He says 当然. So, Bai Xiaohong, the girl, was correct because he says, of course. Of course I'm familiar. And then he says 你看这些照片. So, 照片 we know from the vocab list is photo. We know it's plural, and notice again, as I said before, 照片, the form of the word doesn't change. The characters don't change. Nothing is changed in their shape or anything like that, unlike English, where the spelling changes. But because we've got 这些 before it, we know that he's referring to more than one, so it's plural. And then he says 你看, so he's suggesting that she has a look at them. 这是故宫, 这是颐和园. So we mentioned those in the vocab list. And again, they're definitely places that are worth visiting. So, Bai Xiaohong then asks the question,
你登过长城吗？
你登过长城吗? So we've got our verb 登 and 长城, so to climb the Great Wall or go up the Great Wall. And we've got our new grammar particle there, which refers to a past experience. So have you climbed the Great Wall before? Or have you ever climbed the Great Wall? And Jack comes back with what?
不到长城非好汉，我怎么能不登长城呢？
Right, I just want to make sure that's big enough on your screen. He said, so he comes back with the saying that we saw in the vocab list there. 不到长城非好汉. Now, let me say, if after she'd asked the question, have you climbed the Great Wall before? If he hadn't responded with that, if he just said, no, I haven't climbed before, 我没登过, I can almost guarantee 100% that she would have come back with that line. 不到长城非好汉. It's just something the Chinese can't resist. They'll always say it to you, and often they'll giggle hysterically afterwards because they think it's really funny. Anyhow, so he then goes on and says, 我怎么能不登长城呢? 我怎么能不登长城呢? So, what does it mean? Is it asking, well, how do I climb the Great Wall? No. Here, what it means is, how can not climb the Great Wall? What he means is, how could I not go up the Great Wall? So in other words, it's one of those things that if you're in China, of course, you have to do it. So that combination of 怎么能不 is very handy for expressing that idea of how could I not, whatever it is. All right, so that's a handy one that you guys can learn. Now let's just switch back and have a look.
你还去过别的城市吗？
So go to my next slide. Make sure it's big enough. 你还去过别的城市吗? Okay, so there's our verb, there's our new past experience character 过去过 have you been okay and then we've got 别的城市 other cities now here also we've got 你还去过 you could leave it out and just say 你去过别的城市吗 but here really what 还 means is also so have you also been to other cities let's have a listen
上海、西安、成都我都去过，可是有一个地方我还没去过。
Okay, so he says 上海、西安、成都我都去过 Okay, let's have a look at that first. There's a couple little things in there that we can have a look at. Firstly, I want you to look at these commas. Okay, so really in a way what he's doing here is he's listing out the places that he's been. He's making a list. So the comma for a list is like that as against a normal comma which is like that, which will appear again in a minute. So that's the first thing I want to point out. Second thing is he's finished his list and then, and this is very common in Chinese, they summarize at the end, or they make the comment, the summary comment at the end. 我都去过 I've been to them all. Okay, so that's kind of the speech habit that they have. They list it out and then they have that summary comment at the end. And they will often use 都 again to kind of like to be inclusive. All those things I said before. This is the situation. The other thing also is just to point out here the character for 成都, you'll notice that it's the same character as 都. So this is another one of those 多音字. So when it's in the name of the city, it's 成都, and when it's used as an adverb, it's 都. Right, just to go on, he says 可是. Now we've learned that before. We could have used 但是, wouldn't matter. 有一个地方我还没去过。我还没去过。Alright, so 没去过 I think you should be quite comfortable with now. 还 meaning still or yet. Okay, let's listen to her response.
什么地方？
什么地方 What place? Where haven't you been before?
你的家。
Okay, I think you guys will be fine with that. You understand that. And she then says,
欢迎你去呀！要是你想去的话，我陪你一起去。但是，你得给我买机票。
Okay, so she says, 欢迎你去呀. So from the list we know that means I welcome you to go. 欢迎你去呀. And here's another example of the if. Or is it our first example? Can't remember. Anyhow, 要是你想去的话. Okay, if you would like to go. So he could have said 要是你想去 and left off the 的话. That would have been fine. Or she could have said 你想去的话. That would have been fine. Leave off the 要是 and just say that, and that would be fine. They both mean if. She said, then she goes on to say 我陪你一起去. 我陪你. So 陪, we've learned the word before. When we first learned 一起, we learned this word 跟 with. So 陪 means basically the same thing. It's just that it's a little more formal and it sounds a little bit more like, she will take care of him as they go along together. And then she goes on and she says 但是, and we could put 可是 in there. 你得给我买机票. Alright, now we know from the vocab list that 得 means must, and the way we can be sure is that it comes before the verb 买. Okay, 得买 must buy, 得买你得给我买. You have to buy for me. So it's literally you must for me buy a plane ticket. Okay, so this 给我 is for me. Right. Okay, guys. We'll finish here. I'd just like to suggest that you have a look at the grammar section at the end of the lesson. Go through that. There's some really good examples in there of how the various different grammar points that we've covered today in this lesson can be used. And if you have any questions, please give us a yell. 好，谢谢大家，再见。